Today we've got a slightly unusual one. Dear Me I Was had my attention the moment it was shown, not because it's another tight combo-heavy brawler from Arc System Works, but because it isn't that at all. This is a studio I almost exclusively link with just that, fighters and pixel-perfect showdowns. Yet here, they are crafting an interactive adventure. Quiet, narrative-led, heavily personal. And then there's the bigger twist. It's a Switch 2 exclusive. Why is that? What makes this one the original Switch simply couldn't handle? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Now, if you do enjoy this video today, subscribe if you haven't already. And now, let's get into it. The heartbeat of Dear Me I Was is its story, and not in the traditional plot-driven sense. This isn't a tale of high stakes or branching choices, it's a character study. And that's something I've always gravitated toward. Some of my favourite films, the Before trilogy, Lost in Translation, they live and die on that intimacy, and this game leans firmly into that space. We're simply joining one woman's life, drifting from childhood to adulthood, witnessing her good days, the bad days, and kind of the quiet, mundane in-betweens. Now, I actually read online, Reddit, so do take this information lightly, but one of the directors called it a game really designed for women, and I couldn't disagree more. Every moment here resonated with me personally, regardless of that label. Where it stumbles, however, is in its pacing. The story jumps years in an instant, never giving enough time to really connect with those around her. Even its strongest moments don't have room to breathe. Major life events hit hard, but they're gone before the weight can settle. It feels like this awful thing just happened, but don't worry, 10 years later, it's forgotten, and we're onto something new. I wanted to feel more of that sting, the pain caused, the echoes left behind. Instead, many beats slip by inconsequentially, leaving you thinking about what could have been explored rather than what's actually unfolding. Now, I will say I do think the short runtime here is partly to blame. The developers were extremely upfront about this being a bite-sized experience. I actually went in expecting maybe a couple of hours. Now, in reality, I wrapped it up in about 30 minutes. It's also completely wordless, told entirely through the visuals, which that fits the tone for sure, but it limits how deep these relationships can feel. So what we're really left with is this condensed series of moments. It's glimpses of a life rather than a fully explored journey. So by the end, I just wasn't satisfied. Now, on the runtime, I will quickly say it is a $7.99 price point, or your regional equivalent. I think that at least does reflect that shorter scope. Basically, I think in summary for story here, it's not a full-length narrative adventure, and if you approach it expecting a brief, reflective snapshot, I think it's going to be easier to appreciate what it does manage to capture. Alright, so have I lost you yet? A 30-minute interactive adventure that's really pushing it, honestly, with the word adventure in genre? No? Good, okay, let's move on to gameplay. So this won't take long, as you'd expect. Most of your time here is spent soaking in the narrative. That said, it gives you more control than some visual novels manage in hours, and I do respect that. Now, is the gameplay thrilling? No, but it does enough to keep you engaged. This is also where we can kind of half explain its Switch 2 exclusivity. Every interaction or every gameplay moment is cursor driven, taking advantage of that new mouse style controls. Yes, you can, however, play with a controller, and yes, it absolutely could have released on Switch 1. But does mouse input elevate it to the point where you have to play it on Switch 2? You know, that's just the only way to play. Not at all. I'd have felt exactly the same with controller in hand. What's worse though is the implementation of mouse controls and how undercooked it feels. I was excited when I saw initially how prominently they were using it, but then you quickly realize it mostly boils down to simple pointing and clicking, clearing a plate of food, opening a mailbox. It never really experiments too much. However, the big thing is the drawing sequences. These should have been high points, tied to emotional beats, but in practice you're just scribbling while predefined art kind of fills in on screen. And yeah, it's just frustrating because the potential is right here in front of them. The game lingers on these moments where the character is drawing, reflecting on life's highs and lows. Imagine actually feeling that process, tracing shapes, following contours, slowing down to match her mood. Instead, it's just a missed opportunity for what could have been and should have been a standout feature. And then finally, here's the real kicker. Despite being designed for mouse control, it's set up so you still need to click A to interact. So it's this awkward, weird grip. Needless button presses. It should have been a trigger. And it feels like no one playtested it. You know, a traditional mouse setup, use that trigger. What I did was, because it got so annoying, honestly, was I ended up remapping A to a trigger temporarily. But that shouldn't be on me as the player. That should have been thought about during development. Now though, let's move on to something positive. The visuals and the sound are genuinely stunning. The art leans into this kind of soft watercolor style that doesn't just look good in screenshots, it feels alive. Colors shift and bleed to reflect the character's emotions, and it's really handled with care. The animation itself then is rotoscoped, so drawn over live actors, and that decision really pays off. And yeah, for a wordless story, it somehow captures subtle expressions and body language in ways a traditional style might not. So yeah, every so often it really does impress. Then there's the sound. And there's not much in the way of sound effects, only what's needed, but the music, that's where it shines. Piano-led pieces, they drift in and out and they are beautiful. Often they hit harder than the visuals do, elevating those narrative beats and giving them a weight the pacing sometimes struggles to achieve on its own. It's the kind of soundtrack I'd happily listen to outside of the game just to, yeah, soak it in. So overall, Dear Me I Was on paper was an unusual one for me going in. It's so far removed from what I expect from Arc System Works that I couldn't help but be curious. In execution though, it's not nearly as impressive as I'd hoped. When I see the Arc System Works name, I expect the best of the best. Now, visually and sonically, it's gorgeous, no question about that. The watercolor art, the rotoscoped animation, the delicate piano score, it is beautiful work. But the gameplay feels undercooked, a neat cursor gimmick with little ambition behind it. And the story, with its 30-minute runtime, it holds back too much. It wants you to find your own meaning, to sit in reflection, but instead it ends up feeling fleeting. It's a tale forgotten almost as quickly as it begins. And for those wondering, yes, on completion, there's an art gallery unlock, but there is no reason to replay this game. No branching paths, no hidden layers, nothing new to uncover. You see it once, and that is it. And that kind of stings when, again, a 30-minute runtime. So in the end, I'd say this. It's a game with flashes of beauty, but little staying power. And that lands it today for me at an average 5 out of 10. I think it's an experience that I wanted to love more, well, far more than I actually did. And that's the video down, because honestly at this point I'm probably running out of gameplay footage to show you all. So if this helped you out, subscribe and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers all.